Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah if you're new here. I started this channel to document my journey becoming a single mother by choice by going through IVF. After getting diagnosed with endometrial cancer and PCOS, I am now cancer-free. But if you would like to follow along on my journey, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell to get notified anytime I upload new videos. So I don't know why I've been putting off this video for so long. I did want to make sure that I got all of my IVF bills before making this video so I could give you guys an accurate amount that I paid for my 2 rounds of IVF. So if you're new to my channel, I am now 31 weeks and 2 days pregnant with my first baby that I conceived on my 2nd round of IVF. So I just wanted to go through and talk about all the costs involved with at least my experience with IVF. I know every single city, every state, every country, costs are going to be totally different. And then also depending on what kind of insurance you have, my employer does not cover any IVF related costs at all. So almost everything for me was out of pocket. I'll go into some detail, but there were very few like random medications that would get covered. And I also, because of my endometrial cancer diagnosis, Livestrong Fertility has a program with the Cleveland Clinic, and they covered all of my meds for both rounds of IVF for the egg retrieval portion. So not for the embryo transfer portion, but the egg retrieval, I only had to pay for, I had a specific trigger shot I had to use because I have PCOS. They did not cover that, but otherwise they covered, I would say, close to about $5,000 worth of medications each round. So that's about $10,000 extra that you can add on to my total cost when I give that to you, to get an idea of what I would have paid if I didn't have the cancer diagnosis. One other interesting thing about my 2 rounds of IVF, they were a little bit different, so you'll be able to see the difference in what I paid for between rounds, because the first round of IVF that I went through, I just froze my eggs first because I didn't have a sperm donor yet, and I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do with my eggs, like if I was going to get a sperm donor and get pregnant right away, have an embryo transfer right away, or if I was going to wait a little bit. Because I also had to have another surgery to confirm that my cancer was still gone, that my cancer didn't come back. So my first round was definitely a little bit different than my 2nd round. My 2nd round, I did everything all together. I had my sperm donor already, so I had the sperm sent to the clinic ahead of time before my egg retrieval, so that after they got my eggs, they could create the embryos right away. So that is one of the differences between the 2 rounds. So the first round, my first round of IVF, so I started back in, let's see, April 30th, 2020 is when I had my initial blood work and ultrasound. And the blood work I had done, so my insurance did actually cover some of that initial blood work. That was just kind of like checking everything to be able to give an accurate picture of what my fertility looked like. But I still paid out of pocket $598 for that initial blood work. My initial consultation with the reproductive endocrinologist, because this was when COVID was brand new and they were having televisits, they were actually doing free televisits at the time, so I actually did not have to pay for that televisit. But I believe an initial consultation with a reproductive endocrinologist can be, if your insurance doesn't cover it, a couple $100. But that will depend obviously on where you are located and what your insurance covers. And then my ultrasound. So that first ultrasound I had 2 charges. So you'll notice this, a lot of clinics will have like a charge for the like procedure itself and then a professional charge for the doctor to like interpret it and everything. So I had a charge for $149.41, and then I had a charge for $257.12 just for that one ultrasound. So that's another, what is that, 300, 400, a little over $400. So like that initial, like just getting checked out, blood work, ultrasound, for that first visit, we're looking at, over 400 and about 600, like over $1,000 for that. And then I had another office visit to go over the plan. This was after I got diagnosed with the cancer. I mean, obviously, for the most part, most people are not going to have a cancer diagnosis kind of derail their plans. They found a polyp. So I had to have surgery to have that polyp removed. I did not include any of those costs in here for that polypectomy. And then I had to have a DNC about a couple weeks later to see if, because the polyp had cancer, to see if there was cancer in the lining of my uterus, and there wasn't. So at that point, that's when I decided to freeze my eggs. So I met again with the reproductive endocrinologist after that. That office visit was about $165. So my insurance, I think, did cover some of that, because that wasn't quite IVF yet. That was still in like consultation phase, I guess, because I think it would have been a lot more than that if it was coded as like fertility related only. So after that consultation with the reproductive endocrinologist, I decided to freeze my eggs. So the next payment that I made was just for the egg retrieval process and to freeze my eggs. However, I had the pricing of compassionate care program. So that is the program with Livestrong Fertility. So they not only Livestrong covers the cost of the meds, but my clinic decreased the cost of the egg freezing cycle by half. So I only had to pay $3,569 for the egg retrieval cycle. And so that includes up to 5 ultrasounds, up to 5 nurse visits. So every time you go in for an ultrasound, you'll meet with the nurse also. Ultrasound guidance for the retrieval of the oocytes, of the eggs, culture of the oocytes, cryopreservation of the oocytes, so that's freezing them, anesthesia, and 1 year, the first year of storage. So that is what that $3,569 covered. Again, that would have been closer to like $7,200 if I didn't have the compassionate care program. That package does not include any lab work. So every time I had to go in to get my blood drawn, because during an egg retrieval process, you have to go in for an ultrasound and blood work every couple of days. And then the closer you get to your egg retrieval, you're going in about every day, every other day. Obviously, it doesn't cover medication either, but again, Livestrong covered that. And yeah, it's weird because it says this package price does not include, it has a list of things. It says yearly storage fee. I guess it means after the first year. So the yearly storage fee is $396. So that was just to freeze my eggs. So that IVF package that I paid for, like I said, did not include the lab work. So when I went in for lab work, that first time I went in for lab work before I started my stimulation meds, that was $413. So they checked estradiol, progesterone. I believe they checked follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, and then LH, luteinizing hormone. I don't know if they checked FSH. It might have just been the three, the estradiol, the LH, and progesterone. And then the next 3 times I went in for lab work, so I went in 3 more times for ultrasound and blood work. Each of those was $130. They were just checking my estrogen. And then my trigger shot, which I did have to pay for because the Livestrong Fertility did not cover this type of trigger shot. Since I have PCOS, I needed to trigger with a Lupron trigger shot. So Livestrong Fertility only covered the HCG trigger shot. So normally the Lupron trigger shot is $500, but because all of the other meds that ended up being, you know, close to $5,000, that Livestrong covered. But with the pharmacy that they used, they gave me a deal on the trigger shot because I had already, not me personally, but had spent so much money already. So I only had to pay $99 for the trigger shot. So that was that cost. And that was, so that was it for that first part of my first round of IVF. And I do want to mention, I think it's really important, what I did is I kept this notebook and I wrote all of the services that I had done, the amount that they charged me, the date of service, and then I wrote the date that I paid for that service. I would highly recommend that because a lot of times you'll get a bill from the clinic, and if you just pay it blindly, you could be paying for things that you actually already paid for. And I would like to think, hopefully, that clinics will be honest enough that they'll eventually, you know, they'll show that you have a credit and they'll return that money to you. But it's a lot longer that you'll have to wait to be able to get, you know, a refund check in the mail from your clinic versus just keeping track as you go so you don't overpay. So there was the nicest lady in the financial department. I would call her every month when I got the bill and we would go through it, like all my charges. And because I have record of all I have done at each date of service, and I could see the cost that they were charging me and the date of service, and then I could see in my notebook if I paid for that already. So for example, like when you pay for the IVF package, that included anesthesia costs. Well, anesthesia costs sometimes take a long time to bill, and there were several occasions when I would get a bill from the clinic and they were wanting to charge me for anesthesia, but the financial person has to go in and credit that cost with the package. So like I would pay that IVF package in the beginning because I went through 2 rounds of this, like this is what the trends that I saw. And then she would have to they would set aside, say like $4,000 for anesthesia. And they'd kind of set that aside and not even really look like you have a credit for that. But then when that bill came through for anesthesia services, they have to pull the money from that credit and apply it appropriately. So if I would have just paid these bills like blindly every single month, I would have had a lot of credit. I ended up having a little bit of credit. I'm not really sure how, but because I was so like diligent about this, but even being so diligent, I ended up having a little bit of a credit after the first round of IVF. So I was able to apply that to my second round. But so then the next cost that I had, most clinics, as far as I know, at least in the US, will require, if you're going to be a single mom by choice, or if you're going to use donor sperm at all, like even if you do have a partner, but you're using donor sperm or donor eggs, you have to have a counseling session, and that is not covered by insurance. That was $250 for an hour counseling session. So I paid for that. The sperm, one vial of sperm, and shipping, because shipping is like $200 to $300. I paid $1,405. Actually, I shouldn't say I paid. My mom paid for that. My mom helped me with a lot of these costs. I'll go over how much she helped me with. But yeah, $1,400 for a vial of sperm, and there's different kinds of vials of sperm, so you need to confirm with your clinic what kind of vial they want you to purchase. And then the next IVF package I needed to pay for included one ultrasound, one nurse visit, thawing the eggs, fertilizing the eggs, culture of the eggs. I don't really know what that means, but that was on the other one too. Assisted embryo hatching. So that's for when I had my transfer. Extended culture of embryos, preparation of embryo for transfer, transfer of the embryo, and the sperm washing. So they're going to charge you, most clinics are going to charge you for sperm washing no matter what kind of vial you use. So like there's vials of sperm that are already pre-washed, but a lot of times the clinics will wash your sperm anyways because they kind of don't trust the sperm banks, I guess. So if it costs more money to buy a washed vial of sperm, you might as well just buy the unwashed, because typically there's a lot more sperm in the unwashed vial. And then, so all of that I just listed was $8,097. But this package does not include, so basically this package was for thawing, I know I said all this, but basically thawing my eggs, because my eggs had been frozen, fertilizing them, and then I had to freeze them again. So biopsy, I had to biopsy them because I did the PGTA testing, which is genetic testing on the embryos to see if they were chromosomally normal. So they biopsied them, froze them, and then this also included my embryo transfer. So then they had to thaw the embryo that they were going to transfer and get it ready, and then transfer the embryo. So that's what this $8,097 covers. However, that did not cover the refreeze or the thawing or the PGTA testing. So to freeze, because they had to thaw, biopsy, freeze, and then thaw again, the additional thaw was another $904. The additional freeze was $650. And the PGTA testing was $3,230. And that PGTA cost of $3,230 is just to the clinic. So that's kind of like for the biopsying. But then you have to pay another fee to the lab that they're sending the biopsies to. And that fee was $1,680, and that includes shipping. And for me, that was for 9 embryos. So depending on how many embryos you have, they'll charge you different amounts. And I think there's like a price break if it's more than a certain number of embryos, but every lab is different again. So to recap, I paid, all of that included $12,881 just for the embryo transfer, basically, and the testing of the embryos to the clinic, and then another $1,680 to the lab that tested the embryos. I did also, I was originally going to do progesterone suppositories instead of progesterone and oil injections, and my insurance did not cover that. It was $343 for the progesterone. I ended up I used some of that anyways. I ended up using it for my second round of IVF because I did a natural cycle, but I supplemented with just one progesterone suppository a night for 10 weeks. So I did end up using that, but I ended up not using that for my first round really. So, and then again, lab work is not included. Oh, I just noticed one of these is out of order. I had forgotten that I had one more lab appointment when I was getting ready for my egg retrieval, and that lab appointment cost $156. So that goes back up with the egg retrieval portion. So I had lab work done and ultrasound and nurse visit. The ultrasounds and nurse visits were not covered in this second package. It was just one ultrasound and one nurse visit that were covered, but the rest of them were not. So the ultrasound and nurse visit were $180. Lab work was $255 for that first lab appointment. Then I had another lab appointment that was $255. I really don't know why the lab work was more expensive this second time, like in preparation for the embryo transfer, versus in preparation for the egg retrieval. I can't remember what they checked differently. They must have checked, I think they were also checking progesterone instead of just estradiol on a regular basis. That's probably why. And then since my first try at having an embryo transfer, the first cycle that we were attempting an embryo transfer, my lining didn't get thick enough, so we had to cancel the cycle and start over. So then I had another round of labs for $205 and another nurse visit and ultrasound that was $180. And then I had my lab work to check my HCG, and that was $42.93, which I think my insurance did cover some of that. But that does it for the first round of IVF, which was obviously unsuccessful. And that total amount that first round cost me was $23,475.02. So my second round of IVF, as I said, was a little bit different because I did everything all together instead of freezing my eggs and then waiting some time and then going through the embryo transfer process. So with the second round, the first thing I did is I bought the sperm. This time that was $1,360. I believe I bought 2 IVF vials. So the IVF vials are not as expensive. And I got 2 because I just was worried since my first round didn't work. And by the way, if you haven't watched all of my other videos, even though I had 9 embryos biopsied and sent for testing, only 1 of them was normal. And so since that first egg retrieval did not work and I only had 1 embryo, that's why I had to go to my next round. I also did a bunch of research because I wanted the second round to be successful. So I asked for a lot of extra testing with this round. So I'm gonna go over the cost of all of that, but I just want you to know that definitely drove up the cost of my second round, even though there are things that I did in my first round that drove up the cost. It's kind of a wash, especially because I could not get, even though Livestrong did cover another round of meds for my egg retrieval, the clinic would not discount my IVF package at all for the second time. They only did that once. Next, I was preparing for a mock transfer because I wanted to do the ERA, the endometrial receptivity analysis, and the Receptiva DX test. So those both require a biopsy of the endometrial lining during a mock cycle. So you do everything like you're preparing for an embryo transfer, but you just go in for a biopsy. So ultrasound was $150 when I went in preparation for that. And then I remember I had a lot of ultrasounds because my lining was not getting thick enough. So I just had to keep upping the estrogen that I was on, which the estrogen I was on was covered by my insurance somehow. So I had 1, 2, 3 more ultrasounds, all at $150. So that's another $450. The Receptiva DX test that I would have paid directly to the company that does the Receptiva DX would have been $815. But my biopsy was sent via FedEx and it got lost. It happened when there was that huge snowstorm in Texas. And so my biopsy was lost for like 2.5 weeks. And Receptiva was kind enough, they did not have to do this, but they comped my fee to them. My biopsy was finally found and delivered to them. So I was so thankful because that was like one of the most painful things I've ever had done. I did not want to do it again. The cost for the ERA was $600. So again, that $815 and the $600 are paid directly to the labs or companies that do these tests. And then there's another fee that you have to pay to your clinic for doing the biopsy. So a couple other meds that I had to pay for were cabergoline, I think is how you pronounce it, and letrozole. My insurance covered a lot of it. I only had to pay $29.43 for those two. This was in preparation for my second egg retrieval. So I had $150 ultrasound, $52.32 for lab work, and this is all a little bit out of order. I had more lab work done for $249 times 3. That was all in preparation for my egg retrieval. And then I had another lab work for $114.74. And I can't remember what that was for. But then another ultrasound for $150, more lab work for $130, another ultrasound for $150, more lab work for $130. And then right before my retrieval, I had an ultrasound for $150 and more lab work for $249 because they check more for more things right before your retrieval. And for this second IVF package, this was covering everything from the egg retrieval through the embryo transfer. However, I didn't have the compassionate care discount. And this time, of course, I wasn't freezing my eggs first and then thawing them. I was just getting the eggs retrieved and then fertilizing them right away. So that took a little bit of cost away, but I didn't have a discount. So this round was $10,865. Again, that does not include the $3,230 fee for PGTA testing that goes to the clinic. And it didn't cover the fee to iGenomics, which was $1,695. So that was pretty close to what I paid last time, but I think their shipping fee changed a little. But again, I had 9 embryos tested. Oddly enough, I had the same number of embryos. But this package, like I said, other than not including those, it also didn't include any of the ultrasounds. So all those ultrasounds I listed, that's because none of them are covered. None of the nurse visits, and none of the lab work. So I did have a $1,355 credit for some reason from my first round. So that was applied. And so even though I had paid $12,890, that was without the $1,355 because that was credited to me from my last round, if that makes sense. The biopsy fee that I had to pay to the clinic, I finally got billed for that, for the Receptiva DX and ERA, was $363.09. I think my insurance must have covered some of that, absolutely must have covered some of that, because that probably would have been a lot higher for an endometrial biopsy procedure. And then again, I had to pay for the Lupron trigger shot. So again, I did not pay for any of the meds for my second round because of Livestrong, but I did have to pay for the Lupron trigger shot. That was $99. I had another ultrasound for $150, more lab work for $130, and then additional lab work a day later for $308. One other test that I wanted to have done, which was an HSG, and the cost to the clinic for that was $1,450.44. I believe my insurance did cover, I don't know if they covered any of that. That doesn't seem like it, $1,450. So my insurance must not have covered any of that. And that was done before my embryo transfer. And then I had another ultrasound in preparation for my embryo transfer, just one ultrasound, and I did a natural frozen embryo transfer, so I was not on medication. However, I was supplementing with a little bit of progesterone, like I said, from the leftover progesterone suppositories that I had from my first round that I didn't use. But I wasn't on estradiol or anything like that, so I only had one ultrasound. That was $150. And then I had a bunch of lab work done. That was $407, because before an embryo transfer, they check your estradiol, LH, progesterone. And then I had more lab work done right before my embryo transfer for $150. And then I had lab work done. I had my progesterone checked. That was $30.91. So my insurance did start covering from here on out. I believe they started covering some of my lab work, because at this point I was pregnant. So they were coding it differently in the system. So it was no longer fertility, but it was pregnancy related. So my lab work after that, every time I was getting checked for HCG and then sometimes progesterone too, but when it was just HCG, it was $42.93, but it was $70.94 when I was getting checked for HCG and progesterone. So $42.93 again for my HCG again. And then I am not sure why, but this lab work was $221.69 that I had done about 2 weeks after my embryo transfer. I'm not sure. I think they must have checked. I don't know, or maybe just my insurance just didn't cover that day for some weird reason, because that's so much higher. And then I started having my ultrasounds. But when I officially graduated from the fertility clinic, that is when I stopped counting my costs. So I had another ultrasound for $163.03, and that was my first ultrasound to see if I was truly pregnant. And then I had another ultrasound about a week later. That was $78.66. So I think at this point my deductible, I believe, had been met, so more was covered. I still hadn't met my out-of-pocket max yet though. And then another ultrasound for $42.87. So total for my second round of IVF, I spent $23,610.92. So again, remember that includes the HSG and the endometrial biopsy and some additional tests that I had done. So the grand total for both rounds of IVF that I spent to get this little baby boy, so it is all worth it. But both rounds were $47,085.94. My mom, I calculated, my mom gave me a little over $25,000 of that. Thank goodness. I would not have been able to afford this without her. I had savings that I used for this, and I was very, very busy in 2020. I work in the mortgage industry, and we had a really, really good year. I assist a loan officer. So thank goodness for going through all of this. I was working like tons of overtime, and my commissions were much higher last year than normal. So all of that was able to help me pay for all of this IVF. I do still have some balance on my credit card that I am paying off to cover all of this, but again, I would do it all over again to get pregnant with this baby. I'm so grateful I was able to do this, and I was able to have my mom's help. And yeah, so it is very costly. Again, disclaimer, wherever you live, whatever insurance plan you have with whatever employer you have, like everything is very variable. So this is just gives you an idea of what I spent, and you could potentially spend about this much as well, depending on how many rounds you do and everything. But I hope this video was helpful. Give it a thumbs up if it was, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night or day whenever you're watching this, and hopefully I see you again soon. Bye.